Hey, welcome to today's video all about lead quality versus lead volume. Office is a bit messy today because we're moving office. The arrangement where we are is not working out, so we're going to have to move. Anyway, so there's stuff everywhere. But what we're talking about is quality versus quantity. Okay, so to put some perspective on this, a few years ago, I think several years ago actually, is where a lot of this started. Was that IBM released some sales data and techniques they were using about this thing called BANT, which was qualifying their leads by making sure they answered correctly questions about budget, authority, need, and timing. Right. So, and this translated to the world of like consulting businesses, so other like software businesses, but it filtered down to so many other industries. And I think people are making mistakes in things like the fitness industry as to how we use qualifying questions, because the background of where all this came from was a situation where there was a lot of the really, really high volume of leads, and a lot of them were like leads that were inquiring, right? So they weren't seeing interruption marketing, which is what we do a lot in fitness. That's what Facebook ads are. They are interruption marketing, where asking questions like that can really like choke the volume of your leads, because we're asking them at the wrong point. We're asking the wrong questions, or just asking at the wrong time in general, right? So that's what I'm going to talk about today, because there is a solution to this. It's quite simple. I'm going to talk about some example questions of how you can mix this up. I don't need any fancy diagrams today. If you've seen my other videos about our lead flow process, it's basically the same thing. But what I'm going to talk about today is the actual questions. All right. So just let me check my my notes on that. All right, cool. So what do I mean? Like, what are people saying in fitness questions? So what I mean is that people are running ads. Let's say it's a 28-day kickstart, classic fitness offer. It still works, right? But whatever the offer is, and then you click on the ad, and either you put your details in, or maybe you don't even do that, and you get hit with questions. Things like, can you afford $40 a week? Can you train 3 times a week? Can you start in the next 9 days? Things like this. Are you coachable? Right, which is an odd question. And so while these questions like definitely will give a higher quality of lead, they will absolutely kill the volume of lead, because a lot of people don't want to answer them. They're at a stage of curiosity. They don't want to answer questions necessarily. Some people will. I'm not saying it doesn't work at all, but I'm saying there's a better way to do it. Okay. So, what we want to do is get this balance of quantity, but also quality. Because, look, I agree. The flip side of this is if you just get leads and you say, put your information in, and then you just call and call and call just random people, and you get people that, filled it out on a whim, forget they even filled it out, like they're not even interested. That's the reverse problem. You got all this quantity of lead, but they're terrible leads. So we want to find the mid ground. That's what I'm talking about in this video here, right? So I'm not against qualifying questions. I'm just saying that for small businesses, the problem is not normally that we have way, way too many leads. Okay. Plus, we have to factor in that if we're doing social media advertising, then we are doing interruption marketing. So we have to design a process that accommodates or allows for the fact that those prospective people are at a state of what I call curiosity. They are not at a state of commitment, right? So they don't want to necessarily answer questions. They're not in the mood for that, right? So how do we do this, right? So what we want to do is ask the right questions in the right sequence at the right time, right? And the idea here is that it's not a matter of there are some leads that are qualified and some leads that are not qualified. What we want to do is we want to actually say, okay, so some leads are qualified, but there are some leads that aren't, but we want to transform these into more qualified leads, right? And it's a total win-win, because if they are able to make that shift, then they are our ideal client. We can help them. They get the help they need with whatever we do, and we get the extra business. So it's win-win. So let's look at an example of how this works. So for example, let's take fitness, for example. We'll look at a lot of fitness businesses. Here's one way of doing this without strangling the actual volume of your leads. And so let's say, for example, that we are running, what I said before, that 28-day kickstart. We run an ad. It goes to a landing page. This is roughly what this is. It's a 28-day program. Doesn't give too much information. It's going to highlight some of the key benefits. And we're going to say, simply put your name, email, phone number in, and we'll send you the information. So it's just playing on the fact that people are curious and they want the info. Give us your information so we can send it through to you, right? So we don't put the questions right at the start. We just want to get their details so we can stay in touch. Now, you can start asking questions at this point, or you can go to the process of calling it. Now, we find with Zip Leads that people who are just getting the call booked are doing better than people who are just trying to ask questions, right? So I am in favor of getting a call scheduled. But the way that we do this again is you've got to look at it, what's in it for me. The person's really not that interested at this point, but they just gave you their phone number. So we often, what we do is we say, look, we're going to reach out to you to see if this is the right fit. But we don't want to call you at dinner. We don't want to call you when you're picking up the kids, when it's a bad time, whatever, right? So you tell us when to call you. So it's in your interest. Tell us when to call you. They hit the calendar link. They schedule it in. They don't have to put their details in again. It's another key thing about qualification processes. You want to make them very streamlined. So the questions themselves are, the questions themselves are the friction, if you like, not the process. So they put their information in once, they book, they don't have to do it again. The information translates from the lead form into the calendar. It's very, very fast, easy to do. Okay, now they've booked a phone call. That's actually a real action. So we've actually moved this person who is in a state of curiosity to taking some action. And now they're like, oh, I've actually, booked something, something is happening here. And that is where I recommend putting the questions in. Now, honestly, most people using Zip Leads just say to people, what's the number one result you're looking for by getting started? That's it. It's not complicated at all. That's it. That's all they ask. However, we've got some people using it in a more advanced way, and I want to share with you some ways that can be helpful. So you guys who are watching this from within Zip Leads, you can look at, and certainly jump on one of the community support calls if you want help with this. But and we've even got some things we can push into your accounts regarding some fancy surveys and things, right? So basically, if you want to get a bit more advanced with questions and get them to answer a little bit more than just what's their goal, and again, this is a great thing if you do want to push it in the direction of quality more and create more quality. This is the direction. We've got some Zipline users with 90% conversion on their leads to paying members. They have longer questions like this, right? And so here's some examples, right? So let's look at some of the topics. So let's say, let's look at the, sorry, before I do that, I just want to clarify a general rule about questions. So generally, if you want if you want a detailed answer from someone, just ask them a very simple question. So if you want a detailed answer, simple question. What's the result you want from getting started with this? That's a simple question, right? But if you want a simple answer, like a yes, no, then you put a detailed question. So either way, though, you want it to be very, very clear. So by example, let's talk about the money question. So one of the questions I hate is when people say, do you have the financial resources to invest in this program, right? Now, I used to ask this in one of my old businesses years ago because that's what I was taught to do. And well, that's what everyone's doing. So I'll just do that. Right. And I remember some of the people that would buy the most expensive option of what we did would say, I don't have the resources to invest. Right. And the fact is that not everybody understands the question. And then there's these vague responses that people teach where it's so you've got this vague question, do you have the financial resources? And then you have vague answers of a drop down, which might be yes, I have the financial resources and I'm willing to invest. No, but I can access the resources. No, I don't have the financial resources. Really weird things, right? So if you can do the money question, an example of making this clear is to use the detailed option and say, can you invest $40 per week towards reaching your fitness goal? Yes or no, right? Detailed question, simple answer, right? Now, I'm not necessarily saying to ask that question, right? Because there are more interesting, fun ways you can play on the money question to get an idea of whether they want to invest money. But also, when I talk about creating leads, to actually help transform someone from a place where they don't want to spend money on fitness to where they do want to spend money on fitness. So maybe you don't ask, can you invest $40 a week? Because you don't necessarily want to put the price of your training in the survey because they don't yet have a context of what you do, right? Because until you have the conversation, $40 a week doesn't mean anything, right? This is the issue with pricing on websites, is that until the person understands the service in relation to them, they can't really put a price on it other than to compare you to the gym down the road, right? And if you're going to play the price comparison game, well, good luck with that. So I'll stick with that example, right? So in terms of how you ask the questions and having some fun with this, here's an idea, right? So let's talk at this budget idea, the beginning of the BANT question. I was talking about budget, authority, need, timing, right? So budget. So instead of saying the detailed question, can you afford $40 a week to train, or something like that, you could ask a pair of questions. And if you have something like Zip Leads, then you can put these together where it only asks the second one, dependent on what the answer to the first one is, right? So you could ask, what's the number one result you're looking for, right? That's the first question. Boom. Second question, are you spending money on things that take you away from your fitness goal, right? So it's a bit of a cheeky question, but most people would probably say yes, right? Because we're getting at the fact that maybe some people's lifestyle habits, what they spend money on, certain foods, alcohol, smoking, things like that. Are you spending money on things that move you away from that fitness goal? And most people will say yes. If they say yes, they get a second question that says, would you be willing to consider, or would you be open to consider, pretty friendly question, allocating some of that money towards a plan to move towards your fitness goal, right? And most people get the joke of this. They're like, okay, I'm spending money on garbage, I could put it on that, right? So we're not saying that it's X amount of dollars, but it is a simple question. So it's a detailed thing of saying, like, would you be willing to just move some of that money towards actually spending on your fitness? And now we're actually helping someone make a bit of a mindset shift that, fitness is not an expense. It could actually be a matter of like, well, I could just reallocate funds from there and do it there. And hello, what a big win-win that is, because we're doing less moving away and we're doing more moving towards, right? So that's a fun one you can do. All right. So another example you can do on questions is let's look at the next one, which is the authority question. This one's not usually asked in fitness, but I know some of you are watching this in other businesses where it might be more relevant, where it's like, is there anyone else who needs to participate in making a decision in this, in getting started with us, right? This was the whole authority question that IBM that did, though. They wanted to make sure that people on the call could make a decision, they can get started, and we cut back massively on people going, yep, all right, I just need to go and chat with the team, or yep, I need to chat with my partner, whatever, right? So you can play on this a bit, right? And lots of people have taught this, where you basically say, instead of that, you say, do you need anyone else's permission to get started with us? Right. And so, a lot of people will be like, no, I don't need anyone's permission. I can do what I want to do. Right. So, again, you're just saying this because it's pre framing in their mind that they're ready to make a decision. They can make a decision. Right. So, yeah, we've already started getting them moved towards the idea of spending some money, towards the idea of making a decision. Right. And so let's look at just one last one. I don't know if I've got, no, don't have any questions. Looking at one last one here. With fitness specific again. Okay, so another common one that is the timing thing, right? So is it the right time? So we see in a lot of fitness ads, people say things like, can you train 3 times a week? Can you get started in the next 7 days, for example, right? That's the urgency one. Do you want to do this right now? So that's a tricky one, because you're going to exclude people sometimes for no reason, right? Someone could be literally like, they could just have stuff on for the next 2 weeks, but it's important to them, right? So again, you can be creative with this sort of question, but still make it easy for people. So one of the options here is to say something like, are you in the middle of another fitness program that you need to finish before getting started on this one? Or something on that degree of basically pointing out, are you already training somewhere else that you need to finish and then start training here? And this is an interesting question, because it's basically implying that a lot of people are training. So yeah, we know most of our leads are not training. So the fact that they clicked on our ad, they're probably not training. But it plants the seed that, do most people, maybe people are already training somewhere. I'm not even training. What do you mean finish the last program? So again, you've got to be careful with it. Like, maybe that's not going to suit your exact brand. Maybe you don't want to scare people off and think that this is just something for them if they've already done some training, because obviously that's a big issue for curiosity-based leads, that they might have the objection, I'm not fit enough to get fit. I mean, obviously there's lots of irony around that whole issue, but it's a big one that people are afraid of, like, well, I can't go to that place because that's for fit people to get fitter, right? The reality, of course, is that a lot of you guys that watch my videos, are in fitness studios that you do help people just getting started. But that's a common misconception. So yeah, that's a quick summary on talking about questions and videos, and how questions and surveys and things about this qualification process. So the main point of this is to have a look at the structure. If you are using qualifying questions, have a look at where you're asking the questions and have a look at what questions you're asking and put it in the light of saying, well, yes, I want the ideal quality, but can I do it in a way that I can keep my volume up, so make it relatively frictionless to go through the process, not too aggressive upfront with the questions. Get something like a micro commitment of maybe a phone booking or something like that first, before asking those questions. So you get the volume, and at the end of the day, you get the call booking, right? Like time is everything nowadays. So if you can get that micro commitment before someone gets distracted, awesome. Because the thing is that if they've booked the appointment, you can still get them back to the survey questions later through reminder messages if they haven't finished it. Again, how do you do that? You do it with Zip Leads, right? But and then when you get to the questions themselves, just have a think about, well, am I asking questions that are really geared towards really motivated people, right? Which makes your job really easy from a sales and conversion point of view, because basically you're only talking to people who are ready to buy, versus getting a little bit creative, allowing for the fact that some people right now, when they're doing a survey, are not ready, but you might be able to let them, make some incremental moves towards spending some money towards actually getting started with something with you. So hope that's helpful for you guys, especially you guys watching this inside the Zip Leads community. If you have any questions of how we're doing this or how other people are doing this with Zip Leads in terms of the surveys and things like this, let us know in the comments. We can put together more videos for you to help you actually execute on this.